Why are baby boomers selling their businesses? Is it time for Gen X, millennials like myself, and Gen Z to start picking up a larger portion of the market? And how can baby boomers who are exiting the market and younger generations who are entering into the market for the first time in this capacity make sure it's a smooth transition? And lastly, what can we do to make sure that ethical and profitable decisions are being made in the process? This is the Becoming Better podcast with BBB, a video podcast by Better Business Bureau, Great West, and Pacific. I'm your host, Cameron Nakashima, and with me today is Dale Dixon, the Chief Innovation Officer for Better Business Bureau, Great West, and Pacific. Thank you for joining us, Dale.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, so our first question is going to be a two-pronger. What are we seeing as far as trends go with baby boomers transferring their businesses to younger generations, and what is the larger context for this?
We see that we're in the middle of the largest generational transfer of wealth that we as a society have ever seen. And we're talking trillions of dollars, and the numbers vary based on who's doing, which university is doing the research, but there's just a lot of money. And so when you have a lot of money, you always follow the money trail. And you have a lot of people who are lining up for access to that money. So you have business owners, number one, who say, hey, I am a boomer. I have worked really hard to build this business, and I don't want to get to end of life. And the only thing I can look back on is that I've built a business. There's more to life. And so those boomers who are in their 50s, 60s are saying, if I sell this now and get the value out for myself, I can go and actually live and take those vacations that I never got to take because I was building this business. And then you have the folks who are surrounding them that I think we're going to talk a lot about today, the bankers, the brokers, the insurance people, those who are evaluating, bankers. There are so many industries that are lining up to take advantage of this large generational transfer of wealth. And then you have the people who are coming in and saying, I saw what happened when, most recently we had a company, Intuit, that sent an email out to almost 2,000 employees at 8 o'clock in the morning saying, we're going to do a big layoff today, and you're going to find out if you're the one at 10 o'clock in the morning. And that doesn't set well with anybody. And if I want to be in charge of my destiny as a Gen Z millennial, I'm going to say, you know what? I don't know that I ever want to get that email. And if I own the business, then I have more control. And so they're out looking at these businesses to buy, or there's an inheritance aspect to it. I just watched my parents build this business. They're wanting to go and enjoy their later years, and so maybe I can step in, buy the business, take it over, and continue to grow it. And I have more control over my life. So there's just a lot of pieces at play here. But the biggest thing is we've got all these businesses that have been built and built successfully over the course of the last 30 to 40 years. The owners are saying, I want to experience life before life is over, and it's time to sell. And so who's lining up to be a part of that process?
So I saw the stat the other day from the U.S. Census Bureau. It said that there's approximately 12 million businesses in the U.S. right now, and baby boomers own about 2/3 of the businesses that have employees. So my question is, how does this transfer of businesses impact employees?
We're seeing a few things. Number one, the business owners, those 2/3, the boomers, have really, for the most part, a majority of them have really invested in the culture, and they've created a familial atmosphere. This is family. And so as this business transfers, those business owners are looking for opportunities to make sure that the employees, especially those employees who've been with them a long time and were there from the beginning and really helped to grow this business into what it is, they want to take care of those employees. So there are some options out there that the business owners are looking at, things where it gives the employees a level of ownership in the business. And oftentimes, it results in a challenge as well, that it's one of the employees that says, I have grown to love this business. I was young when I started, I'm now in my 30s, maybe early 40s. You're wanting to sell this business. I'd like to buy it. I want to carry the torch. And so it's a fantastic opportunity for some of these employees. So you have culture, you have opportunity for the potential employees, and then you've got the impact of some of the other things that come into play. We're seeing a lot of venture capital in this, VC, and that's not always great for a culture inside of a company, and business owners are seeing that. So that business owner that said, okay, I want to extract the value from this business, sell it so that I can go on and do something different in life, but I built this great business, I want to maintain culture. Venture capital comes in with a big wad of cash, and it looks very inviting, but it changes the culture of the company. So as the employee, important to be aware of what that means, what that looks like. And there are a number of conversations I've had with both business owners and employees who have gone through this. And obviously my evidence is all anecdotal, but usually there are some consistent patterns and themes that the culture doesn't always necessarily carry through. It can be good, can be bad, but that's important for both sides of the equation to keep in mind through this process.
So we talked about venture capitalists, and we've got a few different options there. It reminded me the last place that I worked, the owner was a boomer, and he actually, as part of his plan, transferred him and his sons. They transferred the business into an employee-owned company, right? So an ESOP. So that's an option. But what are some other options? You've got the what you've just described, but where are some other opportunities for boomers who are selling their businesses? Where can they look to find a good buyer?
When you talk about finding a good buyer, that's one of the really important puzzle pieces. So Better Business Bureau spends a lot of time listening to our customer. We have a total of about 23,000 member businesses across 8 states as Better Business Bureau Great West Pacific. And we really work to stay in tune with those customers. And we've heard from those customers that one of the challenges that you just identified is, where do we go to find the right buyer? Because if you look at the data, basically it's this thing called the Pareto principle. It's the 80-20 rule. I mean, it applies to just about everything we see. 80%, 20% of the effort delivers 80% of the results. And there's a significant percentage of businesses that go out to sell, business owners who go out to sell their business, and it's in that 70 to 80% range, that they're not successful. Like only 30% of them actually go out, find a buyer, have a successful transition. So it's really important to realize that. We trailed all that back in the conversations we've had to really 4 specific areas where business owners say that they're finding challenges in selling the business. The first is, what's my business worth? So when I go out to a potential buyer, that's the first question you've got to have answered, is what's this business really worth? So number 1, what's the business worth? How do you find the valuation? Number 2, in what condition are your books, the financials? And how well do your books tell the true, authentic, real story of your business, where it's been, where it's at now, and where it's going into the future? The third thing is, how do we draw up the contracts? It's a major challenge for businesses in finding buyers. And the contracts, how do I find an attorney who knows my business, understands what I'm wanting to accomplish? Do I want to set up an ESOP? Do I want to explore some other opportunities to give my employees some level of ownership through this process, lengthen it out? Am I passing it on to some of my family? Am I selling it via venture capital? All these options that come into play that require nuances as you look at the contractual side of the house, and how to do that well is really important. The fourth area where we hear from businesses that they're really wanting some help and understanding is if they do sell to an employee, which is an option, the ESOP option, things like that. How do the resulting buyer, the employee, replace themselves? So if I'm a business owner, I'm the boomer and I'm selling my business to you, and let's say you're the number 2 in the company. So you have been my vice president in our roofing company for the last 10 years. And we've grown this company. We now have 15 employees. We have good revenues. And you say, I think I want to buy this business from you. Okay. All of a sudden, you're the business owner, and you're having to figure out how to replace yourself. Who's your number two? And how do you go about doing that so that you have continuity of service in the business and you maintain this strength, the growth, everything else that goes along with it? So we see those 4 areas as being the valuation, the contract, the books, and the employee as being some of the key things to keep in mind as you go out looking for that buyer.
So that's a lot to keep in mind.
It is.
What you mentioned earlier, a business owner, they might want to go talk with, is it an attorney or somebody who can help them get their books straight, everything planned out? Like, what would be kind of our number one asset that you might point somebody to if they're looking for advice or guidance? They're maybe a small business owner. They've never done this before, right? Do we have a good resource for that?
So I was talking, no, there is not. I'm going to say no to this immediately.
Okay.
And I know there are people watching this right now who are vehemently disagreeing, saying, I raise my hand, I'm the person. Now, here's why I say no. And this is because I brought this up with a group of executives, and we were talking through this very concept. And everybody around the table said, I know that in my industry, we're watching this very close. Insurance, banking, business brokers. And they said, everybody is wanting a slice of the pie, and everybody wants to play quarterback, meaning everybody wants to help facilitate the entire process. So you think about, what goes into selling a business. Number one, exactly who's the buyer and how are you going to do this? Are you going to set up an ESOP? Are you going to sell to venture capital? Are you going to pass it on to a family member? All of that number one decision creates a cascade of unique challenges, unique opportunities across the board. And the moment you dip your toe and say, I'm thinking about selling my business, all of a sudden those waters start churning with people saying, I can help you and I'll play quarterback. And it leaves the seller saying, whoa, wait a minute, I don't know who to turn to, who to trust. That's why I say it's a challenge for the business seller in this process. So having a plan going in and getting those 4 areas lined up that we talked about to begin with. So number one, making sure that your books are in order. And then taking the time to find expertise in each of those fields that's going to serve you well. And the moment somebody says, I can quarterback this whole thing for you, I can run it, because I have friends who are ready, waiting in the wings. Most likely, they're there earning a commission on the process. And so you need to have people that you can really trust through this process, because you have to get your books in order. And most of the time, what I'm hearing, the business that goes out to sell, one of the top reasons why it doesn't sell, why it's part of that 70% that doesn't sell, is that the books are not in order. And the business owner has been busy, or they've been busy working in the business, not on the business, like so many of us do. And so they have to get those books in order. So you're talking accountants, you're talking tax. There are so many things that go into the financial aspect of this and making sure that that is ready, because that's a key piece of the sale. Obviously, you're going to need an attorney to draw up contracts, so books, contracts, and the attorney needs to understand very well the sales process you're going through. Is it the ESOP? Is it venture? Is it, are you passing it on to an employee, a family member? All of that is going to take nuanced approach in the contractual aspect of it. You got to get the right person for that. And then making sure that the employees are aware of what's going on at appropriate times, what's going on, how this process is going to impact them, working through that. The valuation takes an expert, and they need to understand your business, and you've got to be willing to let them lift up the covers and look under the hood of the business, which is really, really hard, especially for owner operators, to let an outsider come in and see your dirty laundry. I mean, because you've been working so hard in the business, making it successful day in and day out, that some of the things get brushed aside, left that are going to be really important to this sales process. So not falling for the first person who walks in the door and says, I can do everything for you. That should raise a red flag and say, I need to pick and choose carefully the people at every step of this journey.
That's huge. And I think you mentioned about halfway through there that just trust is such a big part of that, making sure that you surround yourself with people you can trust, make sure you're working with people you can trust. I don't own a business, so I don't know what the answer to this question is, but how many of these business owners who are going to sell already have an accountant they're working with, already have an attorney who they're familiar with, who they do trust, and how many of them are, when they come time to sell their business, coming into this for the first time and needing to go find somebody who they've never worked with before?
The stories that I hear as I'm out talking to business owners, and I was just with a couple who owned a business this past weekend and have just gone through the process within the last year of selling it. And we were talking about this very thing. And so often the business owner starts this process. They have and when I say start, I mean literally like, I think I'm ready to sell this business. And they start going and talking to people and asking questions and seeing just how big this is. And then the number of people who start lining up saying, I can help you with this. I mean, just the fact that you and I have been emailing about this topic, of course, Instagram finds out. And Instagram, I start getting ads from companies that are running full-day workshops on how to effectively sell your business. So when you're bombarded with, people basically with their hands out saying, hey, pay me, I can do this for you, you're left saying, okay, but how can I trust you if I give you all this money in order to facilitate the sale? And that one piece of just being bombarded with so much right out of the gate can be confusing and overwhelming and lead to a certain amount of that percentage of businesses that don't sell not selling because it's just way too much.
Is that just like decision paralysis? They get bombarded and they decide, inactivity is the best action right now, and they just table the whole sale of their business?
That's a fantastic two-word summation. It is decision paralysis.
So this reminds me of an article I read in Forbes that said that nearly 60% of business owners right now, the boomer business owners who are about to transition out, don't have any succession plan in place right now. So we've talked about a couple of the first things that they can do, those 4 big things to focus on. But when it comes to just getting the ball rolling, not getting that paralysis, or maybe pushing through that paralysis and getting the plan itself in place, do you have some advice on that?
Absolutely. So that succession plan would be important. And I think at the very base level, it is, okay, I want to sell this business. Usually the most natural inclination and opportunity is there somebody in the family that is interested, willing, wanting to take it over. So you can just start going down almost a mental checklist about who's in line. Okay, my kids are out. I'm thinking back to the couple that I just spent the weekend with. None of their kids wanted to take the business over. So that was a really easy process to think through. Okay, my kids are all out. They've all engaged in different professions. They have told me point blank that they're not interested in the business. They watched me work really, really hard, sacrifice nights, weekends, blood, sweat, and tears, literally, to build this, keep it alive, and they want a different life. So, okay, I can check the kids off the list as far as not wanting this business. Is there a venture capital opportunity? We know that there are a number of VCs operating in the Northwest that are buying up home service companies really, really fast. They've just been on tears purchasing businesses. If you've got one of those businesses and you want to go down that route, then okay, start doing some due diligence to figure out if my succession plan is, it's going to be a VC route. I'm ready to sell this business. I feel like I've got it built up. Then that would be, I'm I'm going to start working toward that. It's Stephen Covey said, start with the end in mind. And so if we're going to start with the end in mind, this is part of that process, the succession plan. I want to be out by this date, okay? So what are some of the steps I need to take? I need to identify a buyer. Who do I want to see buying the business from me at this date? And for how long do I want to stay involved in the business after it's sold, after I've signed the paperwork? All of those things. Maybe you want to create an ESOP. Is that the way you want to go? Hey, I've got this group of employees who I love like family, and I want to make sure that they're taken care of, and I think the ESOP is the way to do this. So, what do you need to do in order to start getting ready for that, if that is the end in mind? So it's really, the succession plan is saying, where do I want to be at what time, and then start working backwards and putting these pieces in place to be ready for that. And thinking, are my books in order? Okay. Have I done due diligence to find an attorney who's really good at this specific area, ESOP, VC, passing it on to family, whatever the choice is, who's going to be able to, that I trust, that has competence? That's the big thing. Just because it's a friend doesn't mean the person has competence to get you through. We think about trust, and I think about trust from a few different areas. Number one, there needs to be competence. That's huge. Trust is also built on consistency. Is this person consistently delivering value and doing a good job out of their competency? And then do they have good relationships with other people? So when you bring those three pieces together, I'm going into my Better Business Bureau mode, all about trust. How do you start with trust? There's a great Harvard Business Review article that details these three components of trust. People who earn trust have great relationships. They have a level of competence in that specific area, and they are consistent with that competence. So consistency means that they're executing day after day, doing the right things and adding value in that area. They're also growing their competence. They just don't stagnate, but they're actually learning new things. So they're staying up to date on the latest practices. In this case, if you're choosing an attorney and you want to create an ESOP for your company, this attorney didn't just graduate law school, study an ESOP, 20 years ago and hang a shingle saying I'm an expert. No, they have kept up and are current on the most relevant and important areas of building that ESOP as possible. So those are the questions to ask and get past I know a guy. And I know a person and that person knows a person, because going back to the beginning, the moment you dip your toe in the water of selling your business, you will create a feeding frenzy. And that feeding frenzy is going to be scary, and it will lead to this decision paralysis. And it's being ready for that so that you can hit it head on and swim through it safely with all of your limbs attached.
Without getting a bite taken out of you.
Yeah.
So what you just said there reminds me of when we talk about vetting businesses, or even we talk about vetting out scams. And a big part of that is having the conversations, asking a lot of questions, and doing your own research to make sure you know the right questions to ask. And that's going to help you weed out somebody who's maybe not the right fit for you. Maybe they don't have the competency that it's required to sell the business. But what are some other ways that you can look for measurements of trust, see who's competent and qualified to be handling something like this?
So Better Business Bureau is a private, nonprofit business membership organization built around this idea of trust. And we have invested so many resources into vetting businesses. And when we talk about vetting businesses, it's looking at all different aspects of the relationship that a business has with its customers, how that business operates in the marketplace to build trust, to earn trust. I immediately think about our Torch and Spark Awards, where we're recognizing businesses that I like to say set the bar in their industry and in their geography for doing the right thing. We actively go out and look for those businesses and recognize those businesses. And because we have those pieces in place to recognize those businesses, we're constantly vetting. just as I said, people are seeing opportunity in this space of the greatest transfer of generational wealth. BBB sees the opportunity in, we need to sharpen the sword on this vetting aspect so that when you're the business owner and it's time for you to sell, you can come to Better Business Bureau as this trusted resource to vet those businesses that are lined up ready to help. There are some great businesses out there lined up ready to help, and they're going to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And we as Better Business Bureau have the tools to start identifying those companies for you. So if you're a business owner thinking about selling the business and you know that you need the attorneys, the brokers, you want to assemble a team of professionals around you, then vetting those first and foremost, BBB is a great partner in that to find businesses that are going to truly serve you well and do what's in your best interest as the seller of the business. That's the first place to start. Peer groups. So if you don't have a peer group that you're actively involved with as a business, I encourage you even go out and build one yourself. Go out and find other business owners in the community who are your age. It doesn't have to be the exact industry you're in, but some kind of auxiliary industry, something connected in some way so they have a level of understanding of where you're at, have the same number of employees, do the same level of revenue a year, and ask them, hey, are you thinking about selling your business? Can I take you to coffee and have a confidential conversation, because I just want to pick your brain and make a new friend in the business community. And you can find just by that you will start to uncover things that you need to know about and prepare for in your business. You'll get extra wisdom. We're always smarter together, not alone. I know that, I always work and want to be the dumbest person in the room. It's like if I bring a group of really smart peers together in a room, I'm going to learn a lot from that. And obviously I need to contribute. I need to dive into my level of expertise in an area to help contribute to that. And I want to give in that way. But when I'm in a room with my peers, I'm going to learn a lot more. And especially if I'm willing to have that level of conversation. So once again, people you can trust, find those folks.
And just to interrupt you there, it's huge, right? If you're about to sell a business, to have a peer group. If you're just getting into a business, to have that peer group. There's Chamber of Commerce. What other areas and resources can people use to find peer groups in their industry or around them?
So we see the importance and the value of peer groups. Better Business Bureau is building out a digital network peer group for businesses to engage with one another and pose these kind of questions. There are a number of formal peer groups out there. I'm a part of what's called Vistage. V as in Victor, ISTAGE. If you're not familiar with Vistage, it's an opportunity to gather together with a group of experts under a cone of silence once a month and learn something about business and talk through some challenges. And then there are a number of others. I'm thinking about Entrepreneurs Organization, if you've been a part of that, making those connections. You can turn to a chamber and attend one of their events and just keep your ear to the ground on people and start to form your own. I have created my own personal peer groups around business, around technology, and I just purposefully facilitate the relationship and build the relationship. So it's getting together for coffee at 6:30 every Thursday morning. And we talk business, we talk family, you name it. We talk about a variety of things, but just the value in that. But it requires an investment of your time. And the payoff is significant, especially when it comes time for you to do something as important as transition your business.
Right. So peer groups, huge. Lean on them. You've got Better Business Bureau as a directory to find resources. What else can they be looking at?
Start to look for those people that you trust. And when I say those people you trust, it's, well, I've known him for 30 years. Okay. I've known my dentist for 30 years, but that doesn't mean I'm going to give him a scalpel and say, work on my appendix.
True.
So Just because your insurance person, you've known them for 30 years and they've taken good care of you in the insurance industry, does not necessarily mean that they're the ones that can help facilitate the sale of your business. Even though they say, well, I've known you for 30 years, of course I can help with that. Let's talk about your competence in this area. What have you done to grow that competence? Let's talk about your consistency in helping businesses sell. And if it's a friend, you're just going to have that kind of real conversation. And don't get sidelined trying to maintain the friendship and feel obligated because it's a friend. This is really important. You need the best talent around you in all these areas. So if you've got that really good insurance agent and that you've had for a long time, you have high levels of trust, they have lots of competence, and they know, and you know that that insurance agent has your best interest in mind, and they've proven that time and time again. Maybe you could take that insurance agent out and say, listen, I'm thinking about selling the business, passing the business on to family, selling to venture capital. Are there some people in this space who you would recommend I talk to? And watch the reaction really close. Oh, if you start to see them salivate and say, "Oh, I've got the whole list of people, and I can run quarterback on this, and we'll get this done, within the next 2 weeks." Take a breath. No. I don't. Okay, you can listen, but use great caution and exercise good judgment. So you could have that conversation with your insurance agent, with your banker, if there's a banker you trust. These are all people who are key players in this arena that you're going to have to choose carefully when you go down the path. You're going to need to find a business broker. You're going to need to have a valuation of your company who can help you do that. Accountants, especially accountants with good tax backgrounds. You can talk to bookkeepers, anybody where you have a high level of trust, and that trust is born out of that person doing what's in the best interest of their clients. That's where vetting from a Better Business Bureau standpoint really comes into play. But those are the key players that you're going to need to lean on. And if you can find one and look at it like dominoes, I can find one, maybe they work with somebody else who has expertise and experience in my specific kind of business with the type of sale that I want to initiate.
Something you said that I picked up on was just because you've been working with somebody for so many years doesn't mean that they're highly competent in this massive life change that you're about to undergo and you need help for. And it's I'm kind of a people pleaser, so I know I would have trouble with this if I was in that boat. But I think something important to keep in mind is the numbers that we've talked about earlier here, where the odds, even in good circumstances, are stacked against you as somebody who's trying to sell your business successfully. And so you really can't be taking any chances with people who might not be qualified. And so starting with your network, like you talked about, and then checking their credentials, asking around. I think something too where the Better Business Bureau comes into play is, check if they are accredited, check what other people are saying, even if you've known them a long time. Is your relationship with them, is your experience consistent with what other people have been experiencing, right?
Yeah. My dad's an entrepreneur, and so many lessons that I learned from him on the farm. And I'll never forget the conversation we were talking about the people that are in the periphery on the farm. So you have people who are selling ag chemicals and tractors. And he said, I look at those people, my vendors, as being my teammates to make this a successful business. And each one is playing an integral, important role. And so I want to make sure that goes back to our 3 things about building trust. I have a good relationship, that they are exhibiting high competence, and that they are consistent in the work that they do. And when you start to approach it away from I've done business with this guy for 30 years. That's not part of the equation unless it's the consistency equation. But look at the people around you as being the team that you're going to be able to use moving through this process, because you can't do it alone. It does take a highly competent, consistent, relational banker insurance agent, broker, attorney, all of these people that you need on your team to make this happen. And so, yeah, it seems like a big bite, but once you do it one bite at a time, and it goes back to that, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So we're gonna just bite this off, and we're gonna think about it one at a time. But it's gonna be what's in the best interest of me, my business, to make this happen, knowing what I'm starting with the end in mind.
Perfect. And so we've talked a lot about somebody who's selling their business. I kind of want to change tracks now and look at somebody who is, they've maybe saved up a nest egg, maybe they've got their MBA and they're ready to move on to something new, and they're looking at some of these opportunities. It seems like there is a misbalance here. They have a lot of choices to choose from, and it doesn't seem like, at least from my perspective, there's a ton of people grappling for these opportunities. So I guess the question is, where do they start to look, and is it really as abundant for their options as it seems?
So I brought this up with my peer group, and this is exactly where the conversation went. And the group of executives and business owners and entrepreneurs around the table said, there are a lot of people out there that are sitting on this money, liquid capital. They're ready to buy a business, but they don't know where to turn. And I'm a simple guy. Like I said, I'm a farm kid. I just flip the script and say, okay, if you're looking to buy a business, you're going to need to do and think about some of the same things. So if I'm wanting to buy a really good business and good bang for my buck, good value, I'm going to look at these 4 areas. Number one, I want to have a very solid understanding of the financials of the business. If the business owner is serious about selling, not willing to work with you through a non-disclosure agreement, through all the legal necessities of looking, they're not willing to really pull back the covers and show you the business, what the financials are, see the books, understand their customers, all of those pieces, then that leaves you questioning, okay, I don't think you're really ready to sell or wanting to sell. And that would be a red flag for somebody wanting to buy a business. Also, exercise. So think about those 4 areas that we talked about from the very beginning. Are the books in order? Is it valued correctly, appropriately? Were the right people involved with the valuation? Are the contracts good? You've got an attorney that you trust that can go through the contracts, and then you're looking at that employee base. And you're asking questions to the business owners. How long on average have your employees been with you? What's the turnover rate for your employees? How often, your churn rate, how often are you having to hire and replace positions? And you can learn a lot by looking at those specific 4 areas. And there's more. We're simplifying this down. We've got less than an hour to talk through this in a podcast, hitting the highlights, but we want people to have the actionable takeaways that they can really think through and get a good solid foundation to start this conversation. And then same thing, you're flipping the script. You're looking for the right people to surround yourself with as a team to help make this purchase happen so that you're getting the best value for you, and you're getting a business that's really going to serve you well, that's going to be profitable, that's going to have, really has a great reputation in the marketplace. You don't necessarily want to go out and buy a business that has an F rating with the Better Business Bureau, because that tells you a lot about how it treats its customers, about how it operates in the marketplace, its reputation. And if you've got to build that up if you go out and you buy a business and you pay top dollar, and then you find out that it has an F rating with the Better Business Bureau, that it churns customers almost as fast as it churns employees, and it can't hold on to a customer for any time, and it can't hold on to an employee for any time, and you just paid an inflated price for that, and you're sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, now I've got to improve the reputation in the marketplace, as evidenced by BBB. I have to go out and I have to start finding employees and change the culture internally, and then I have to go out and I have to win back those customers in this segment, the industry that I'm in. you've just bit off a big chunk where a little bit of due diligence up front would have said, oh, I want that A+ rated BBB accredited business because it's taken its reputation seriously. It has employees. It's kept for a long time because it's built a culture that is really strong, and therefore it has customers that stick with it for the long term. That's a high value company. You're probably going to have to pay more for it. Yes, but it makes the job in the long run a lot easier.
Right. And if you have a business that is the inverse of that, if what you described earlier, where they've lost a ton of customers, you have to go out and get it. You have to correct the culture internally. There's all these background papers that are actually inaccurate. You have to update all of that. It might appear that you're better off just building from the ground up. And this kind of reminds me of when my wife and I bought our house a couple of years ago, and we're going through and we have to get home inspections, right? And if the inspection's bad enough and the house is old enough and the foundation's cracked, you'd be better off just building your own property.
Yep. Bulldoze it.
Yeah.
Start over from scratch.
Yeah, maybe use the land.
Really expensive.
Yeah. So kind of building out that analogy a little bit. An important part of the home buying process was getting the inspector to come through, and we get the report on like, hey, there's maybe some mold over here, or there's a crack in the foundation, or XYZ. And we rely on them to help go through and check all this stuff to make sure that, okay, we know what we're signing up for when we buy this property. From a business owner's perspective, you spoke a little bit about Better Business Bureau and what we can offer. What other things can Better Business Bureau help with in that decision-making process? And what are some other resources that buyers can look to when they're trying to make that decision?
So as you look at the business profile on the business, so if I'm a business buyer and I'm looking at a business, I'm going to go to the BBB and I'm going to look at the profile for that business. So I'm going to type the name in the search bar. I'm going to pull it up and it's going to say the business name. It'll tell me all the principles. I'll see a letter grade where that business is accredited. And as I scroll down the screen, I'm going to be able to read customer reviews. So how is this business, what's the business relationship with its customers? I'm going to be able to read complaints. That word complaint can have a negative connotation immediately. We encourage businesses to think about it from a very positive connotation. BBB is here to help you with your customer service. And if you look at it from a customer service standpoint, how is this business engaging with its customers to address a challenge? And that complaint information is a treasure trove for the business buyer in assessing what the reputation of this business is, how it is engaging with its customers, the trail that it's leaving out there, the breadcrumbs to follow to see how it's handling customers. And then when it does have a problem, what kind of tools are in place internally to be responsive, to be transparent, and to help its customers and to find a true resolution with those customers who might not be happy in the moment. Because every business transaction is a form of communication. And when you ever have two people communicating, there's a good chance there's going to be a breakdown in communication at some point. Might not happen between you and me, but it's going to happen between me and somebody else. And so how do you handle that breakdown in communication? And that's an important piece to understand as you're going out and looking at a business to buy.
Okay, so let's say I'm in the market to buy a new business or a business that somebody is selling, and I don't have this huge nest egg I'm sitting on. I can't go out and buy it immediately. What types of financing options should I be considering if I do want to buy one of these businesses?
So starting with the end in mind, how are you going to structure this? What are you going to do? Having a really good banker, somebody that you've worked with, would be important. And Better Business Bureau doesn't have a lot of expertise in the finance aspect, but you do have options like the Small Business Administration, different financial institutions, credit unions. There are some credit unions that really focus on the commercial side of helping businesses and helping get businesses up and running. And so identifying the different funding options, understanding them, and then finding a trustworthy partner to start going down that road, having the conversation. Hey, I want to buy a business. I've got this little pot of money, how do I maximize and leverage it to accomplish what I want to do? What do you need? And understanding. And it's a conversation with the funder, the potential funder, to better understand that.
I've got a two-parter question as we land the plane. So part one is, if I buy a business, there's this leverage of how do I leverage the existing business that I just bought, but bring my own fresh ideas to it? And then somewhat related to that, kind of detached, is if I'm looking for a business to invest in, is there a place, is there like a directory that I can look to, or a place that I can find where these businesses are being sold?
So the first piece, leveraging the existing success of the business and continuing to grow it and implement new ideas. I immediately thought of a book. It's in the Harvard Business Review catalog, and it's called The First 90 Days. And it's really aimed at how an executive goes in, like a new CEO can come in, but I think an owner of a business can employ the same approach. And that is, in those first 90 days, spending a lot of time listening. And you want to know, as the business owner, you want to be listening to the employees. That is the foundation of the business, especially those frontline employees. What do they do? How do they do it? I have a friend who owned a restoration company, sold the restoration company at a young age, took some time, figured out what he wanted to do next, and he decided plumbing. And he bought a long-established, highly trusted, really strong plumbing company. And he went as far as going out and getting his plumbing license. That's how deep he dove into understanding the business. So understanding the business in those first 90 days is, I'm going to interview my customers. I'm going to interview the employees, interview the customers. Super important. Talk to the customers, understand how the business serves, and then look at this concept of change management. So change management is, how do we start to bring in some of these ideas? And that's exactly what this friend of mine did, who left, sold a restoration company, took some time, bought a plumbing company, spent some time understanding the business, got to understand the industry so well that he got his plumbing license, and over the course of that time started adopting and integrating some of the new things that he was learning through this process, so that he could better have a stronger culture in this already strong organization, how he could make the customers even happier who were already thrilled based on their experience. And it was fun to watch this progression. It is not going to happen overnight. It's not something that you can snap your fingers and make happen. It's a long game doing this once you've bought the business. But going in with that plan and having the general concepts from a book like The First 90 Days really helps get there.
So kind of comparing that, what you just described, to an experience that I went through recently, which was getting onboarded at a new job, right? And I think there's something, you can vet the business or the organization that you're going to get hired onto, and have all these ideas before you get hired. And then really there is this interaction, there's this learning process of, once you're in it, the day-to-day, you're working with the people, it's a whole different mindset. If you let your mindset shift, a whole different mindset shift that occurs there, where you realize, oh, okay, maybe the ideas I had coming in aren't necessarily going to work in practice. And so I think, drawing that parallel to somebody, you do a ton of homework on that business before you buy it to make sure it's going to work, but there is a huge value in actually doing that listening once you're in the position.
I pay quite a bit of attention to the physical aspect, the psychological aspect, the physiologic aspect from a human standpoint. And there's this thing called neuroplasticity. Yeah. And it's the ability for our brains to learn, how flexible is my brain to adopt and adapt and to learn new things. And it used to be thought that your neuroplasticity greatly diminished, and it does diminish over time. But there are some tools that we as human beings can learn to stay fresh, to learn something new, stay curious. And so that point that you just made is super important, that once you buy the business, if you walk in and say, I'm the owner, what I say goes. It's going to be pretty tough. If you come in and say, I'm the new owner, I'm really curious as an employee, where do you see our biggest opportunities? Where are some of the pain points that our customers are having, and how, and inside of what we do as a business, how can we meet those? And be curious to learn. You're on the road to building that really strong culture, building the business that is going to be more profitable, that's going to attract and keep customers, and it's going to be here for the long term for now you as the new owner.
Perfect. And who doesn't want that? Yes. Okay, so last part of that two-parter, I guess it's a totally separate question, but where can people find businesses that people are selling? Do we have resources we know of?
There are business listings. In this day and age, there are so many tools with just an internet search, and some of it is just having your ear to the ground. And so if you are engaged with a group and just say, hey, I'm interested in buying a business, if you hear of anything, reaching out to business brokers. All you have to do is do the Google search on business brokers in my area, and you can probably find a list of businesses that are being sold. But I think a lot of people have success through network. Like if I am engaged in a network and I just let my network know that, hey, I'm interested in buying, all of a sudden somebody's going to say, oh, you're interested in buying? It's been in the back of my head that I'd like to sell my business. Are you interested in plumbing? Or are you interested in roofing? Or whatever the business is going to be, that would be your opportunity to learn something new. So it's networking, Google searches, number of ways that you can go out and find businesses that are for sale.
Great answers. Thank you so much, Dale. And so that's all the time we have. This has been the first episode of Becoming Better, a BBB podcast. If you enjoyed or found value in what you just listened to and watched, please go ahead and drop us a like, share this with somebody, maybe save this channel, subscribe, and until next time, have a good one.